Hey everyone, and welcome back to Motivation Library. Today we are diving into a book that really kind of shook things up for me a little bit, I gotta say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's called I Moved Your Cheese. For Those Who Refuse to Live as Mice in Someone Else's Maze by Deepak Malhotra.
Wow. That's a mouthful.
It is. It's a long title, but
It grabs your attention, though.
it does grab your attention. And, I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking of that classic, Who Moved My Cheese?
Right.
And this is like a sequel. Is it a rebuttal? What is this?
Yeah.
But really, it's almost like a whole new perspective.
Yeah, it's like somebody took Who Moved My Cheese and said, wait a minute, there's more to this story here.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I am very excited to have our expert here with us today who is going to help us kind of unpack all this and figure out, how this applies to our own lives.
Well, thanks for having me. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation, especially for anyone who's ever felt stuck. Or like they're just going through the motions.
Absolutely, yeah. And, for those of you who maybe haven't read Who Moved My Cheese or don't remember it so well, it's basically this story about these mice who live in a maze.
Right.
And their whole world revolves around, finding cheese.
Right, finding the cheese.
And the cheese that's a metaphor for what we all want in life.
Right. Success, happiness, security.
It could be anything.
All of it.
Whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's the cheese.
Exactly.
And so, the message of the original book was, be adaptable.
Right.
Embrace change and don't get stuck in the past. When the cheese moves, you got to move with it.
Got to move with the cheese. That's right.
But this book, I Move Your Cheese, kind of challenges that a little bit, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It asks, what if constantly adapting is actually keeping us from something bigger?
Yeah.
What if we're so busy chasing the cheese that we don't stop and think, are we even in the right maze?
Yeah. And I think that is such an interesting question, and it's really thought-provoking. And that's what I love about this book is that, it takes this familiar metaphor of the maze.
Right.
And turns it into a way to examine, our own choices, our own assumptions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it does that through these three really interesting mice.
Oh, yes.
Max, Zed, and Big.
That's right.
And each one of them has a totally different approach
Very different approaches.
to the maze. And that's what this book's all about.
Yeah, so let's start with Max.
Okay.
He's the one who really kind of shakes things up.
He does. He's a rebel.
He's not content to just, accept the way things are.
Absolutely. And unlike the other mice who are just, focused on finding the cheese, Max wants to understand the whole system.
Yeah.
He wants to know who's moving the cheese.
Right.
And why he's really questioning the rules of the game. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. We get so caught up in our day-to-day, just in following the rules that we forget to stop and ask, are these rules even serving me?
It's like we're on autopilot.
Yeah.
It's just going through the motions. And sometimes it takes a Max in our lives to wake us up.
Yeah.
And make us see things from a different perspective.
For sure. For sure. And so Max, he becomes determined to escape from this maze.
Right.
So he starts, studying it, figuring out, where are the weaknesses? How can I get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he meets Big.
Right.
And Big's a whole other character.
Oh, yeah. He's different.
He doesn't care about the cheese at all.
Nope. Doesn't care about the cheese.
He's just focused on building his strength.
That's it. That's his whole focus.
He's like working out all the time.
He's like the ultimate gym rat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Big ends up helping Max escape.
He does. Max couldn't have done it without Big.
Wow. So they team up.
They do.
And when Max gets outside the maze, he makes this incredible discovery
Tell me about it.
that the maze was built by people.
Wow.
The whole thing
It wasn't natural.
is a system that's designed to control the mice.
It's all a setup.
So all this time they've been, playing by someone else's rules and they don't even know it.
Exactly. And I think that is so powerful because it makes you think about our own lives, right?
Yeah.
How many of us are just focused on the cheese, the immediate reward, and we haven't stopped to question the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And we're going to talk more about that when we come back right after the break.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Like, we're all in this maze,
Yeah.
Right. Working hard, chasing our goals, but maybe we're not even aware,
Yeah.
the bigger forces that are at play.
The bigger picture, exactly.
Yeah, that are shaping our reality.
And I think that's where the book really challenges us to step back for a minute and ask some tough questions.
Yeah.
What are the mazes in our lives? What are the systems we're operating in that we haven't even stopped to think about?
It's like
Oh,
you think you're free, but you're actually, part of this elaborate system
Totally.
that's controlling you.
That's a great analogy. And what I think is even more interesting about this book is that Max doesn't just escape the maze.
Really?
He decides to go back in.
He goes back
He goes back.
to try to change things for the other mice.
Yes, he's like a freedom fighter for the cheese chasers.
Oh, wow. So he learns like the ways of the people.
He does. He learns the language of the people who built the maze.
Wow.
He figures out how to manipulate the system.
Really?
And then he starts moving the cheese around
Wow.
to try to give the other mice a better experience.
That's fascinating. But, it's like, is he really helping them?
Right.
Or is he just becoming another form of control?
That's such a good point. And that's one of the things I think the book leaves us to think about.
Yeah.
Even with good intentions, can we really save others from their own mazes?
Right.
Or is the true freedom like finding our own way out like Max did?
You can lead a horse to water.
But you can't make them drink.
You can't make it drink.
And that brings us to Zed,
Oh, yeah, Zed.
the second mouse.
Right.
Remember how he walked through the wall?
Yeah, what was up with that? Can all mice learn to do that?
Well, Zed's perspective is that the real maze isn't physical.
Okay.
It's mental. He believes that the walls only have power if we believe they do.
So it's like if you can change your mindset,
Yeah,
you can change your reality.
that's the essence of Zed's philosophy.
Wow.
He's all about, challenging assumptions,
Yeah.
breaking rules, and realizing that the limitations we perceive are often self-imposed.
Like whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly.
All in your head.
Zed's journey is about transcending those mental barriers and realizing that we have more power than we think.
I love, so we've got Max the Rebel,
Right.
who escapes and tries to change the system.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got Zed,
Yes.
who's like the Zen master,
The Zen master.
showing us how to break free from our own belief.
Right, our own limitations.
And then there's Big,
Oh, Big.
who doesn't even care about the cheese.
Doesn't care at all.
He's just focused on his own strength.
His own path.
Yeah, his own path.
He's the ultimate individualist.
Yeah, the maze is irrelevant to him.
Totally irrelevant. And I think there's something powerful in that, too.
Yeah.
Big shows us that sometimes the best way to deal with the maze is to not let it define you at all.
To just focus on what matters to you.
Exactly.
And create your own path, even if it means, bunching through a wall.
Exactly. So you see, each of these mice represents a different approach
Yeah.
to dealing with the challenges of life.
And they each have something to teach us.
They absolutely do.
It's really interesting.
Now, how do these different approaches resonate with you? What stands out the most to you? I think they each have something very valuable to teach us.
It's funny.
What's that?
When I think about these mice and their different approaches, it makes me realize that there's no one right way
Right.
to navigate the maze.
I agree.
It's about, figuring out what works for you,
Right.
what aligns with your strengths and your values.
Absolutely. We can learn from all three mice,
Yeah.
Max's willingness to question the system, Zed's focus on mental freedom,
Yeah.
Big's unwavering dedication to his own path.
And maybe depending on the situation, we need to tap into different approaches.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes we need to be a Max,
Yeah.
shaking things up, challenging the status quo. Sometimes we need to be a Zed,
Yeah.
letting go of those limiting beliefs and realizing that, those walls we see might just be in our minds.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to be a Big,
Yeah.
just putting our heads down, focusing on our own goals,
Right.
even if the world around us feels like a chaotic maze.
So I guess a question for our listeners is,
What is it?
what kind of mouse are you?
Ooh.
And what kind of mouse do you need to be right now
Ooh.
to navigate the mazes in your life?
That's a great question to reflect on.
And I think I moved your cheese, gives us a really valuable framework
It has.
for doing just that.
It encourages us to not just accept the way things are, but to actually,
Yeah.
shape our own reality.
So I question the rules.
Yes.
To break free from limitation.
Break free.
And to find our own unique paths
Yes.
to success and happiness.
It's a reminder that we are not just mice in someone else's maze.
We have the power to choose our cheese, to design our mazes, and to create lives that are truly meaningful.
And sometimes that might mean leaving the maze altogether.
Yeah.
And finding a whole new world to explore.
Well said. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're questioning the cheese that you're chasing, or if you're just curious about exploring a different way of thinking, I highly recommend checking out I Moved Your Cheese by Deepak Malhotra.
It's a short read,
It is a short read.
but it's packed with insights that can really change your perspective.
And who knows? It might just inspire you to move your own cheese.
Maybe.
Thanks for joining us today. It's been a
Ah.
great conversation.
It has been a great conversation.
And thanks to all of you for joining us here at Motivation Library.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to like and subscribe for more insightful book summaries.
And inspiring conversations.
Until next time.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep moving your cheese.